Fire Emblem's core formula doesn't really lend itself too well to creating gaming icons. You don't become a Mario or a Link overnight, especially if you only get 1 or 2 games to show what you're worth. That applies to main characters of course, but it also applies to villains. We may be able to name them all off the top of our head, but our parents won't get much further than a lucky guess for a nemesis. Fire Emblem has no Bowser or Ganondorf, and that's okay, but thinking about this did make me curious. Who is the most iconic Fire Emblem villain? Well, that may seem like a simple question, the answer is all but. Let me explain. First, I think it's important we come to an understanding who even are to be considered villains in Fire Emblem. After all, I think we can make a fair assessment that the Demon King for Mortis is probably a villain. But what about Leon? The guy he possesses and isn't inherently evil at all. He becomes the antagonist regardless, but that doesn't necessarily make him a villain, right? Similarly, there's also characters like Edelgard or Takumi, who both are playable protagonists or villainous antagonists, depending on how you play Free Houses or Fates. So it's important we figure this out. But unfortunately, the definition of a villain is really not that clear. Some dictionaries describe it as effectively the same thing as an antagonist, the adversary of a hero, while others see a need for wicked, evil or malevolent characteristics. I personally definitely feel the latter is a very important factor, because the more antagonistic explanation is entirely dependent on what side you're on. People have discussed whether Edelgard is misunderstood or the embodiment of evil for years now, and I'm not looking to become just another one of the billion videos on that topic, but it's important to know that Dimitri and Claude have never had that discussion around them. And yet, they are antagonists of the Black Eagles route regardless. You don't have to be a villain to be an antagonist, is my point. Chrom is an antagonist from Grima's perspective, even though we can all agree he isn't a villain, but a hero. So in order to qualify as the series' most iconic villain, I want to see wicked, evil or malevolent characteristics. And that means some characters who you may consider villains if you only played one path of a game are not eligible if they don't show these questionable qualities. That includes Edelgard, but also Rhea, both of who have differing viewpoints for the future of Fodland, but don't act out of evil intentions. The same thing applies to Ryoma and Xander, for example, as well as for most other characters that can be recruited, not considering Spot Pass. And while there are still some weird cases remaining, like the aforementioned possessed but not inherently evil Leon and the seemingly evil but not actually that bad Rudolph, unless we want this video to be over an hour long, I'd say we continue. We have a good enough idea about who is and is not in consideration, right? Evil and malevolent deeds make you a candidate, it's that simple. Alright, time to move on to the analysis then, beginning with the status of all villains within the Fire Emblem series itself. While it is true most villains, just like the characters, usually only appear in one game, there are some exceptions, which means we have points to hand out. Both Medeus and Garnev appear in the 2 Arcania games, Zephiel is in both Elite titles, Grima is not only Awakening's main villain, but also a secret boss in Shadows of Valentia, and the Black Knight appears in both Radiant games. However, not every appearance should be weighed the same. Some for obvious reasons, like how Zephiel's appearance in Blazing Blade is more of a cameo than anything, but also for simply the reason that some games have had way more eyes on them than others. Veld and Nemesis may both only appear in one game each, but that one game's popularity wildly differs. Point being, we definitely need to consider that certain games simply sold more than others. Free Houses is an obvious one, but so are Awakening and Fates. That said, popularity is not only measured by pure numbers. Engage is one of the best-selling Fire Emblem games, but it and its characters are not among the most popular or well-known, because fans of the series didn't spread their love to the same amount as previously. On the other hand, the Radiant titles didn't sell well, but it seems many people have since tried out the games. I hope illegally, otherwise you're all out of a big bag of coins, but still. Their renewed popularity in especially the West is widely covered, and while it of course can't run with Awakening or Free Houses popularity wise, it is bigger than the sales numbers would suggest. But I think one thing is very clear from looking at only the core Fire Emblem games. So far, too many villains are indistinguishable. After all, we the fans have played all games, and are well versed on all of these, and the number of reappearances is too low for significant leads to form yet. If the biggest games had a clear villain, we would have a runaway lead by now, but that isn't the case. Awakening shifts from Gangrel to Walhart to Valadar, and Fates and Free Houses have the whole multiple paths thing, which leaves the only true villains of the game to be the overarching ones, Antagonist and Nemesis, who are barely even mentioned in some routes. But there is another side to the Fire Emblem fandom that can be used as a unit of measurement. The spin-offs, the side titles, the game's intelligence system stuffed to the brim with characters they know we like in the hopes we'll buy it. That of course includes heroes, but also warriors, which looking back is an interesting look into the popularity spectrum of the late 2010s. While it isn't entirely accurate, I mean, why is Ike not in this? Some villains do appear in the game, being Garneth, Veladar, Iago and Grima. This is not something that decides the winner of course, but it still means points to them. Similarly, Tokyo Mirage Sessions also features a couple villains as enemies, being Aversa, Gangrel, Garneth, some random bosses from Awakening, and Medeus, who is even the final boss in this game. Yeah, for some reason this game went all in on Awakening as Shadow Dragon, and I'm not sure if we ever figured out why. Anyway, of course, the game which leaves most to analyze is Heroes, which not only has a literal popularity contest built into it, but also gives us insight into which characters people are excited for. After all, IS knows damn well which characters sell. Generally speaking, the more alts you have, the more popular you are. And this category also has us handing out some minus points. For example, Loptus doesn't even appear in Heroes, that says enough. Nergal was a very late addition, which is also worrying for his status. When looking at alts though, some interesting names emerge. Grima has done rather well for himself, but he may also be cheating by possessing the body of the much more popular Robin. The Black Knight has also done well, but he similarly is pretty much two separate characters. Two names we haven't even mentioned so far yet, but are on a very respectable free alts are Reinhardt and Berkut. Now, Reinhardt is a very weird case, because his popularity is entirely the result of Heroes itself. Based on Phrasia, no one bat an eye, but he was an incredibly strong unit on the mobile game during its peak popularity. And that's another factor we need to discuss, the influence of Heroes as a game itself. It's long behind us now, but Xander is actually a pretty significant villain in the first few books of the game. That has to count for something. Veronica is not only a main character for Heroes, and also one with a good amount of alts, she also appears as an emblem in Engage, giving her suddenly a way bigger profile among known gacha players. She is still DLC, sure, and she's barely a villain nowadays, but based on her original portrayal, I do think she still counts. She did act out of evil intentions after all, even if she has since had a change of heart. But of course, the best way to use Heroes for this thought experiment is by looking at the Choose Your Legends ballad. Now, I looked into all of them, putting more weight on the first ones as well, because I think it's pretty clear that Heroes' audience today is a different kind of person than it was when the game first began. Now, only one villain has ever won first place in Choose Your Legends, and that is Golvig. Yeah, those who have never played Heroes or dropped it after a few years will have no clue who that is, and explaining it takes way too much time, but let's just say I wasn't kidding when I said Heroes today has a completely different audience than in the early days. Veronica also once finished second, which is good enough to get a legendary alt, but it is a little telling that a non-Heroes villain has never been voted to the top, assuming you don't count Edelgard. Some have been close though. During the early years, Reinhardt, the Black Knight, and Heroes originals Loki and Leaf scored pretty well and came relatively close to the podium. As new Heroes original characters were introduced, Loki and Leaf would fall off and be replaced by the new flavor of the year, but especially the Black Knight has remained high scoring up until the most recent ballad. Reinhardt has lost his place somewhat, but Leon has had a recent rise to balance out the villainy in the ballad. And to further show sales aren't everything, Solon may hail from the best-selling free houses, but he barely got 10 votes during the most recent Choose Your Legends. Then again, Fire Emblem is nice and all, but the true icons are made in the big, scary world out there. And while no Fire Emblem villain is exactly an icon of gaming, there's still levels to this. And the best way to gauge that is by looking at the series we all have to thank for being able to play Fire Emblem in a language we understand. Super Smash Bros. Now, not a single villain is playable in Smash right now, although, in the story of a Smash fan, every Fire Emblem character is an antagonist. But that means we have to look at the side material of the game, because even if you're not getting a splash screen, being in the game is still way better for your status than not. That said, it takes until Brawl for villains to finally make their debut in the Smash series. Ashnard and the Black Knight both appear as collectible trophies and stickers in the game, which is not amazing or anything, but it's a start. Smash 4 would expand on this heavily though. The Black Knight not only returns as a trophy, but his helmet is also available for use for your Mii fighter. Another trophy is handed out to Valadar. Smash Ultimate would ditch trophies in favor of spirits, but that only means more are available. Julius, Leon, the Black Knight, Gangrel, Medeus, Ashnard, Walhart and Garen all get their PNG included. But the true winner of the Smash test is the Black Knight. He is promoted to Assist Trophy, which is essentially this little helper character that appears during a battle. Mind you, the other Fire Emblem Assist trophies are Tiki and Lyn, some of the most popular characters in the series. So yeah, I can make the conclusion a long drawn out one, but I think we know where this is going. The Black Knight is Fire Emblem's most iconic villain, and honestly, it makes sense. Even when not considering his character and portrayal, his design and name are super recognizable, and do really have a sort of iconic energy to them. If his name hadn't been Black Knight, but just Zelgius, I'm not so sure he would have won this. But then again, the Death Knight is in a similar position, but not even remotely as popular, so maybe I'm cutting him short a little. I'd say the other places on the podium go to the quite similar Medeus and Grima, but the gap is honestly pretty big. Really, the Black Knight's biggest competition is the argument that Edelgard is a villain. But that's the kind of discourse you guys can juke out in the comments. In fact, who do you think is the most iconic villain in Fire Emblem? And would you be interested in a follow-up about the most iconic character? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel to stay updated on all my future Fire Emblem content coming up. For now, thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.